Recent events unfolding in Dalton have ignited a firestorm of controversy, with most of the focus landing squarely on Mayor Tiffany Henyard and the increasingly polarizing methods she's using to maintain her grip on power. At a recent village board meeting, Henyard revealed a sweeping 30-day temporary appointment for several top positions, including the police chief, village attorney, special counsel, and executive assistant. Many critics saw this as a calculated attempt to redirect attention and generate sympathy in the face of mounting public scrutiny. Among those speaking out was political commentator Candace Owens, who didn't hold back. Owens fiercely criticized Henyard, accusing her of engaging in blackmail, unethical tactics, and manipulative leadership, all designed to maintain her control. According to Owens, residents have been pressured into silence or coerced into pledging loyalty, with threats to cut off municipal services for those who don't fall in line. She framed these actions as nothing short of an abuse of power, asserting that anyone who would stoop to such levels simply isn't fit to lead. Scandal after scandal has plagued Henyard's administration, from ongoing lawsuits to allegations of corruption, fueling widespread dissatisfaction across the community. Owens pointed to a pattern of intimidation and unethical conduct that she believes is not only eroding trust in local government, but putting the very fabric of Dalton's democracy at risk. She called for a full-scale investigation into Henyard's alleged behavior, warning that if the accusations prove true, serious legal consequences could follow. Her call resonated deeply with many in the community. Residents who once felt powerless began to speak up, echoing demands for change and accountability. The mayor's strong-arm tactics, once swept under the rug, were now center stage, and more people were beginning to call for her resignation. Still, Henyard has her defenders. Supporters argue she's being unfairly targeted, with some suggesting that Owens's critique was overblown and lacked hard evidence. To them, Henyard is a misunderstood leader caught in the crossfire of political warfare. Despite the defense, the backlash hasn't slowed down. The mayor's administration continues to face unrelenting pressure, and public confidence in her leadership is rapidly deteriorating. In a surprise move amidst all the turmoil, Henyard publicly expressed support for former President Donald Trump, congratulating him on his 2024 victory in a message that praised his political comeback and called for unity. The post, made just an hour after Trump's win was confirmed, raised eyebrows, not just for its timing, but for its tone. Typically, public officials issue formal and carefully worded statements in such moments. Henyard's overt enthusiasm seemed to signal a shift in political allegiance, leading many to wonder whether her show of support was heartfelt or strategic. Was this a genuine appeal for unity, or a carefully timed maneuver to realign herself with a powerful political figure who could help her weather the political storm? Critics weren't buying it. Many saw her sudden pivot as a transparent effort to save her failing image. Her alignment with Trump, a sharp turn from her past rhetoric, appeared to be less about unity and more about gaining political leverage. To her detractors, the move reeked of desperation. And the irony? It was hard to miss. While Henyard extended praise to Trump, her own administration was still under fire for corruption, coercion, and silencing opposition. The contrast between her embrace of national leadership and the dysfunction within her own backyard only intensified doubts about her sincerity. Under Henyard's leadership, dissent has been punished, opposition voices silenced, and controversial decisions pushed through without consensus. It's a pattern many residents recognize, one where political survival has taken precedence over public service. People in Dalton are growing tired of leadership that seems more invested in optics and control than in solving real problems. Her support for Trump, a Republican, also raised questions about her own political identity. Henyard has long identified as a Democrat, making her sudden shift all the more suspect. In a politically charged town like Dalton, her praise for Trump didn't feel like unity. It felt like opportunism. If Henyard truly wants to chart a bipartisan path forward, It will take more than a social media post. It will take actual cooperation, something her administration has long struggled to demonstrate. The pressure is rising. Disillusionment among residents and local officials is reaching a boiling point. With trust eroding, lawsuits piling up, and federal investigations looming, Henyard's political future is on shaky ground. Whether her attempt to gain Trump's support helps her survive or only adds fuel to the fire is yet to be seen. What is certain, however, is that her recent appeal for unity might be too little, too late. That point was hammered home at the OIT, most recent village board meeting, another chaotic scene that cast even more doubt on Henyard's leadership. What was meant to be a structured civil gathering to address pressing concerns like budgeting and public safety quickly unraveled into disarray. Rather than fostering dialogue, Henyard tightened her grip, controlling the flow of the meeting and suppressing voices that didn't align with her agenda. Tension was thick in the room. When Henyard deliberately excluded Trustee Kill from participating in the discussion, it was seen not just as petty politics, but a blatant show of dominance. What should have been a democratic process turned into a power play. And when Trustee Price challenged Henyard's authority, she didn't back down. She doubled down, further fueling the hostility. As the meeting spiraled, Trustee Gonzalez ultimately walked out, unable to stomach the toxic atmosphere any longer. But rather than reflect or consider new approaches, Henyard used the moment to spotlight herself. She positioned her stance on a forensic audit of Thornton Township's finances as a call for transparency, conveniently ignoring that the audit itself had already raised red flags about misuse of credit cards by trustees. Her pivot toward claiming the moral high ground felt disingenuous to many, especially when viewed in the broader context of her leadership. For months, critics have accused her of valuing control over collaboration and favoring loyalty over integrity. The meeting became yet another example of her prioritizing personal power over public service. And that's the heart of the matter. Henyard's administration, time and again, has chosen dominance over dialogue. Her leadership style is rooted in exclusion, not inclusion. Her focus, critics say, is more about consolidating authority than confronting Dalton's real issues. Now, with the eyes of the community and the country watching, the future of Henyard's leadership is more uncertain than ever. The calls for accountability are getting louder. The legal threats are becoming more serious. And the patience of Dalton's residents is wearing thin. At stake is more than just one mayor's political future. It's a test of how a community responds to power unchecked, to leadership that strays from transparency and accountability. Tiffany Henyard may still hold office, but her ability to lead, to inspire confidence, and to truly represent Dalton is hanging by a thread. As the walls close in, one thing is clear. Dalton is ready for answers, and the people aren't afraid to demand them. As the chaos unfolded during the meeting, Henyard quickly began deflecting blame, scapegoating the IT department for technical difficulties, and painting Trustee Gonzalez's walkout as an act of irresponsibility. In doing so, she effectively diverted attention away from her own leadership failures and cast herself once again as the lone warrior fighting for the community's best interests. It was a calculated and cynical move, another example of her manipulative tactics designed to deflect criticism and consolidate power. By the time the meeting finally ended, it was painfully clear that Henyard's leadership was doing more harm than good. What was supposed to be a collaborative forum for problem-solving had devolved into a power play, a theatrical display of dominance, carefully engineered to control the narrative. Her actions left both residents and trustees questioning whether she was capable of leading with integrity, or if her only true mission was maintaining her grip on power at all costs. The fallout from that meeting exposed a deeper, more troubling pattern, a leadership style that prizes control over cooperation and self-promotion over meaningful community engagement. Instead of focusing on real, practical solutions for Dalton's many challenges, Henyard has consistently prioritized her own political survival, often at the expense of the very people she was elected to serve. And now, with election season approaching, The weight of her actions is beginning to crush her credibility. The public's disillusionment is growing louder by the day. Her behavior during the most recent meetings, confrontational, accusatory, divisive, has only deepened the public's mistrust. While her recent attempts to align herself with former President Donald Trump may have been intended to shift the narrative in her favor, it's clear that a single social media post isn't going to erase months of mounting backlash. Her political future and the future of Dalton now hang in the balance. The growing frustration in the community suggests that Henyard's time in office may be nearing its end. The consequences of her leadership, her dysfunction, and her refusal to collaborate will likely echo far beyond the walls of any meeting room. As voters begin to reflect on the chaos that's unfolded under her watch, many are questioning whether real progress is even possible as long as she remains in power. Mayor Tiffany Henyard's leadership in Dalton has descended into a spectacle of self-interest and manipulation. Each public meeting reveals more about her increasingly autocratic and ego-driven approach to governance. What should be forums for transparency and collective problem-solving have instead become stages for a one-woman show, where dissent is crushed and the spotlight never strays far from the mayor herself. At the latest board meeting, Henyard's behavior hit a new low. What began as a standard agenda quickly devolved into dysfunction. Henyard bulldozed through items, disregarding procedure and dismissing opposition. Motions were ignored. Civil discourse was tossed aside. Anyone who dared to challenge her was steamrolled by her demands for compliance. For residents and trustees hoping for thoughtful dialogue, it was another frustrating, unproductive mess. Instead of discussing real issues like public safety, budgeting, or accountability, Henyard took center stage for a lengthy monologue. For nearly an hour, she painted herself as the only one working on behalf of Dalton, accusing her critics of corruption, selfishness, and betrayal. She presented herself as a misunderstood champion, a lone fighter battling against a system filled with inefficiency and deceit. She highlighted a $2.2 million tax fund allocated for Thornton Township homeowners, claiming it rightfully belonged to the people. But as she continued her tirade, it became clear this wasn't about transparency. It was about re-election. Her rhetoric wasn't focused on solutions. It was crafted to build a narrative, one in which she was the victim, the hero, and the savior, all rolled into one. Anyone who walked out of the meeting? She labeled them part of a hate group. Opponents weren't just dissenters. They were enemies. That kind of rhetoric didn't just stifle debate. It poisoned the atmosphere. Henyard wasn't leading. She was defending a throne. Residents watched as their public forum turned into political theater. What they wanted was leadership. What they got was drama. And for many, the message was clear. Henyard wasn't there to listen. She was there to survive. Trustee Carol, caught in the crossfire, found herself stuck in a losing battle. Bound by duty, but stifled by dysfunction, she struggled to do her job. Instead of engaging in policy discussions, she was left fielding accusations and watching power plays unfold. It was impossible to work toward progress when every meeting became another round of finger-pointing. The toxicity only escalated. What should have been a platform for civic engagement had devolved into a stage for Henyard's personal agenda. Collaboration was gone. Transparency was gone. What remained was a leadership style obsessed with optics and control. She wasn't just undermining her colleagues. She was eroding trust across the entire village. Henyard's political survival had become the priority, no matter how much damage it caused. With each passing day, it became harder to believe she could ever lead effectively again. The dysfunction ran deep. What once resembled a functioning democracy was now teetering on collapse. Her disdain for process, her resistance to compromise, and her constant narrative manipulation had pushed Dalton to the edge. The issue of the $2.2 million tax fund, which could have sparked a valuable conversation about financial accountability, was instead repurposed into a campaign talking point. Henyard framed herself as the only one fighting for the people, while branding everyone else as part of some grand opposition. The irony? That rhetoric, as theatrical as it was, rang hollow. It wasn't about transparency. It wasn't about ethics. It was about control. By painting herself as a martyr, Henyard hoped to discredit her critics and reinforce her base. But the cracks were showing. Supporters were losing faith. And the broader community was tired of the act. Residents no longer saw a leader working for them. They saw someone fighting to stay in power, no matter the cost. The board meeting, which could have been a chance to reset, to rebuild trust, only confirmed the worst fears about her leadership. Civil discourse was replaced with lectures. Debate was replaced with dominance. Trustee Carroll, once eager to serve, was now just trying to survive within the system. As Henyard's behavior escalated, so did the frustration within the board and among Dalton residents. Every issue was treated as a test of loyalty. Every decision was filtered through the lens of political survival. The community was no longer just concerned about dysfunction. They were questioning whether any real progress could be made under Henyard's watch. Her once promising leadership has become a cautionary tale about what happens when power goes unchecked. Democratic values, transparency, dialogue, accountability have all been sacrificed at the altar of political ambition. Her manipulation of public narratives and refusal to share power have plunged Dalton into a crisis. And now, the people are demanding change. Henyard's singular focus on herself, her re-election, and her image has left Dalton adrift. The growing frustration in the community has reached a boiling point. At this stage, it's hard to see how any political maneuvering can undo the damage she's done. Dalton's future, and its ability to recover from this chapter, remains uncertain. But one thing is clear: the public's patience is running out, and Henyard's time as mayor may soon follow.